Welcome back to the 24th floor. Here with my guy, Parth, Upadhyaya from the Daily Memphian. We got to talk about these Tigers. On Friday, Memphis Athletic Director Ed Scott met with media to give an update on the renovations to Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium, but he also got into some other topics, including revenue sharing, which has been a hot topic across the NCAA. The House versus NCAA settlement was finalized Friday, allowing schools to share up to $20.5 million in revenue with their student athletes per year. Ed Scott says 20.5 is a little lofty for the Tigers, but also did not say exactly how much money Memphis was working with. What he did say is that they'll be competitive with schools like Kansas in basketball, and they'll be even more so or have more money to work with in football specifically.
The only reason I'm not giving out the number is because it's proprietary. Once I give out the number, people are going to benchmark against us, right? And I don't need them doing that. That's not what I'm about. I'm worried about what we do, and I know that we're going to compete well in that space.
All right, so Parth, you've been following this pretty closely. Yep. Obviously, you keep up with Tigers basketball as the beat writer. That Kansas number was between $4.5 million and $5.5 million. Shout out to the Kansas Star, I believe that was the article.
Kansas City Star. My boy Shreyas Laddha. Yep.
Okay, so according to that's according to their AD, straight from the horse's mouth. If Memphis is playing around with that kind of money, what does this mean for them in terms of competing in the NCAA and the AAC and moving forward?
Yeah, I think to Ed Scott's point, it kind of kills the speculation of Memphis not being able to compete with the Blue Bloods, the bluest of the Blue Bloods, Kansas in this case, when it comes to revenue share. What it doesn't kind of explain or shine light on is that extra money that schools like Kansas, that Duke, that North Carolina, those schools have, because they're hitting the 20.5, right?
Right.
So what's happening then is after you hit that 20.5, they're bringing in collective money. Yes, that money has to run through Deloitte or a third party that examines the validity of the deals. Like, is this actual NIL or is this pay for play? Like, it can't be pay for play anymore according to the NCAA, right?
Right.
Is what they're saying. But since Memphis is not hitting that 20.5 threshold, like Ed Scott told us on, I believe, Friday, the collectives will be dissolved. And what will happen is that Memphis is going to work on getting an in-house collective of sorts, its own NIL.
Which in some ways they were kind of already doing, right? I mean, they were working in partnership with
901 Fund, with
901
Bluff City
Fund, right, which are technically outside, but those were created specifically to help the Tigers anyway, right?
For sure. But now, all the ins and outs of the operation will be underneath the umbrella, right, of Memphis Athletics. And I think the reason that's notable is because, like we said, like Ed Scott said even, the schools like Kansas, Duke, North Carolina's of the world, they're hitting that 20.5 threshold, then they're having money on top of that from the collectives. Memphis, whatever number Ed Scott and company are at, whether that be 11, 12, 13, they're still working to make up that ground. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I think that's where that gap happens. So it's about, how much money are they going to generate from not only revenue sharing, but also from this new in-house collective. How much is that going to add on top of that, specifically for the men's basketball program at Memphis?
Do you have any idea what that number has looked like or could look like?
Well, in the past, I know, for example, last year's roster was around that 5.5 million mark, which was excellent, right? That was very competitive across the board for Memphis, even with the Power Fives, Power Fours, whatever you want to call them. But we've seen this offseason everybody kind of either catch up or surpass that threshold. There's been transfer portal inflation is what I like to call it.
Yeah,
where
no kidding.
Players that were going for $1 million last offseason are going for $3 million, right? And we're seeing that across the board. So it remains to be seen, I'd say, how much Memphis can generate with this new in-house collective and how that will affect the bottom line when it comes to the money divvied out to men's basketball.
When you look at the House versus NCAA settlement in its totality, for Ed Scott, he kind of said he feels like this will be a good space for their university to operate in, specifically for their case. Do you kind of agree with the level of school that Memphis is? Does this House versus settlement case work in their favor to you, or is it something that it'll be kind of remains to be seen, or could it work against them, do you think?
Yeah, I think just reading between the lines of his comments when he said that quote
it felt like he was very confident.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, Ed Scott could sell ice to a polar bear. So
he could, man. He's a smooth operator.
Great salesman.
He's a smooth operator. Shout out, Ed. But I think what he was trying to say is with regulation, right? With everybody playing on a level playing field as far as the rules, the parameters, the guidelines, yes, Memphis in that world can compete, but when there's just the wild, wild west, like Ed Scott said, when stuff's being done under the table, Memphis may not be able to go toe to toe with schools in that setting.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think what we know is the under the table kind of stuff. It probably is still happening, right?
Oh, it's going to continue to happen,
and what NIL brought was okay, we're bringing a lot of that under the table stuff above board, or at least it's out in the open.
Yep.
But with the NCAA kind of stepping in here with the settlement again, it's okay, we have guardrails again. And while guardrails may be good in the grand scheme of things, it also allows for, like maybe we don't want to operate with the guardrails. We go under the table.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about kind of the other side of this, which was the Pac-12. We talked to Ed Scott again, and he mentioned that a lot of folks have been speculating that they were going to the Pac-12 or that we should have gone to the Pac-12 the first time, all that good kind of stuff. Check this soundbite out, what he had to say about his social media attention.
Scared, like I got one yesterday, scared money don't make money. I don't have an offer from the Pac-12, so it's not scared money. I have no money. So how am I going to make a decision on that, right? I told y'all before, and I'll tell you again. When we get an offer, I will stand up in front of you and be accountable for whatever decision I make as the athletic director in conjunction with the president and the board of trustees. But until we get an offer, there's nothing for me to talk about. I checked my email knowing I was going to get that question today just before I left, and I did not see any breaking news on the ticker that the Pac-12 announced their media deal. So for me, my position hasn't changed.
Ed Scott reminds me a lot of my dad. Like, that is such a thing he would have done. He's like, let me have all my facts in a row, all my ducks in a row, so I know exactly what I can and can't tell you. And it's going to be a little tongue-in-cheek with whatever he says. But this isn't the first time we've gotten a very direct response from him, right, about these Pac-12 rumors. Last time we talked to him about this specifically was like September of last year. So what do you think this says about the very clear line that he's drawn between Memphis and the Pac-12, or really any moving around between conferences?
Yeah, I think it was the Pete Thamel report, right? Pete Thamel of ESPN reported a couple weeks back, or a week or so back, that Memphis had been, or not Memphis, Pac-12 officials and Big East officials, that's key there, had been discussing adding Memphis as a football member to Pac-12 and then every other sport, including men's basketball, to the Big East. Well, Ed Scott's saying, hey, look at where that was sourced from. It wasn't anybody on our side, which is Memphis, right? It was Pac-12 speaking. It was the Big East speaking about potentially doing that. But there have been no substantive conversations, using Ed Scott's words, about that actually happening, anytime soon, right? And even Thamel's report, to give Pete Thamel some credit, like, he made it very clear that those discussions would not continue or become substantive until the 27-28 calendar year, academic year rather.
Right, and I think too what Ed Scott's pointing out the most here is like, we didn't use the soundbite, but he said it pretty emphatically. He's like, I'm trying to get us to the Pac-12. I'm trying to get us to the Power Four, one of the Power Four conferences. He said that is our first goal, clearly, unequivocally. Anything else is kind of secondary, although he's going to field all offers, field phone calls, and that kind of thing. I like what he's been saying from that arena, in that we're not going to settle for something less just for the sake of moving, right?
Yeah.
We are looking for the best deal possible. He understands, as far as money and everything like that goes, that it's probably going to be in one of those Power Four conferences, whether it is the ACC, the Big 12, most likely, if it's going to be one of those four. I agree with him that at the same time, it's like, hey man, y'all in the Pac-12 don't even necessarily have your ducks in a row. You don't have a TV media deal.
Well, they announced it this morning.
Did they announce it this morning?
CBS will.
Well, shout out to CBS.
Yes,
Well, so you tell me, what are we looking like?
Yes, I was doing some other stuff this morning, so I didn't get a chance to delve into the numbers or anything, but I saw the Pac-12 did put out a press release announcing their media rights deal. Yes, so now they're in full-fledged pursuit of that, eighth full member. Could that be Memphis? I don't know.
What do you think about the possibility of moving to the Pac-12? Is it something you think Memphis should do? And if so, yes. If not, why not?
I think if they can work it out where football only goes to the Pac-12 and the Olympic sports and men's basketball goes to the Big East or the ACC, some other conference, right? Because the toll of traveling to the West for women's soccer, for baseball, for men's soccer, for track and field, that's a lot, man. It's a lot of costs, too. You're adding costs. Like, it may be the media rights deal is comparable or a little bit more, but how much cost are you incurring also with those moves? Yeah. That's what you got to look at.
Yeah, I think the constant travel out west would really not be to the Tigers' favor at all, especially when you're looking at those Olympic sports. They already don't draw in money, right? So it's basically siphoning money out to constantly be flying out west. You're talking about 3-4 hour flights, layovers
crazy
weekly,
stuff.
and they're not flying private, right?
No, it's not. They're not on the PJ with Penny Hardaway.
They're not on the jet with Penny Hardaway. So to kind of bring it back towards Tigers basketball, when you look at what the House versus NCAA settlement does now, you get 2 more extra scholarships. Do you foresee Penny using those in order to bring in a couple more players?
We actually asked him that on Tuesday night. It was after the Tigers on Tour event in Lakeland outside of the Owner's Box Sports Grill. And he said that at first, when he started this thing, he was thinking, okay, if the House settlement passes, he's going to use all 15. But now, with the way the guys are gelling, with what he sees in front of him, he may only add 1 or 2 more. He may not hit that 15 threshold. He said 13 or 14 is probably the likelihood here.
Yeah,
and they've got 12 already. Remember that.
They do have 12 already. And I think what we know about Penny, what he said before, is like he wants everybody or as many people as possible to be in June.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
so these guys, we have had about a month to practice together, to be around each other, and there's a certain level of chemistry that's already there.
For sure.
And I think you're probably adding at the margins here a little bit more.
Yeah, you're not adding a needle mover unless Dane Danger gets that final decision for the NCAA, gets cleared, and is added to the roster.
Yeah, and all we hear from that camp is just that no news is good news kind of thing. We don't know if that's
yeah. Folks are hopeful, but you know how these things go.
Okay, so when you look at this roster as it stands right now, what's your assessment? What do you think about what Penny's put together?
It's a lot of what ifs, man. Like what ifs across the board. Like last year, you had a lot of talent, as he's always had. But you also, with that talent, had kind of guys who had been there, done that, right? Tyrese Hunter, been in the NCAA tournament and won. PJ Haggerty, yes, he had done it at Tulsa, but he had done it. He had been one of the nation's best
high-level
scorers.
scorer. You knew what you were getting, more or less.
Exactly. Colby Rogers, 41%, I believe, career three-point shooter, coveted by Alabama, Kansas. Musa Cisse, elite shot blocker. So you had guys who kind of fit cleanly into roles and had done those roles at power levels in the tournament or elsewhere. This year, you've got a lot of question marks. You got Sincere Parker, who is a bucket, but he's a bucket in 18, 19-minute spurts. Can he do it on a 35, 32-minute per game basis?
And we know Penny's going to play his guys.
Exactly.
Penny he's kind of like Tom Thibodeau like that. Like he's going to play those starters in a lot of minutes, and so you got to be able to prove that you can do it at a high level,
no doubt,
for a long period.
No doubt. And the list goes on and on, right? Aaron Bradshaw, top 5 recruit out of high school 2 years ago, but he hasn't panned out yet. He didn't pan out at Kentucky. Not at Ohio State. Can Penny get the best out of Aaron Bradshaw? Can Penny get the best out of Doug McDaniel, who took a step back last year, a little bit at Kansas State, with his efficiency and his shot making and stuff. So kind of you're hoping for some guys to revert back to form of what they were 2 seasons ago. You're hoping for some guys to find themselves for the first time. Yeah. Like, can this all happen in order for Memphis to reach its highest potential? I guess that kind of remains to be seen a little bit.
I think Aaron Bradshaw is kind of the most interesting to me for those, because we saw it with Dane Danger.
Yeah,
right? He had 2-3 seasons where he really didn't do much of anything. You can see the body type. You can see, I'm sure Penny's able to see his footwork and things like that. And then when Dane got to Memphis is really where he unlocked some level of his game that had kind of been hiding in there.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of wondering, all right, can Penny do the same with an Aaron Bradshaw who is 7'1", 7'2", right?
Yeah,
He's
different type
big
of
body in the
player.
middle.
Kind of more of a face-up big rather than back to basket. He's 7'1", 235, something like that. Pretty skinny guy. But can Penny kind of tap into his potential as well? Yeah.
All right. So we'll have to see. Keep up with Parth, the beat writer for the Tigers basketball for the Daily Memphian. He is the guy that will keep you informed about these Tigers throughout the entirety of the year. Parth, I appreciate you coming on,
Thanks
my man.
so much.
Of course, and we'll have to bring you back.